But see, that's life, right? When you're trying to build a company, when you're trying to get that job, a lot of times circumstances aren't what you expect them to be, but you have to be mentally nimble enough and really emotionally tough enough to not buckle to that moment and actually grow from it. Hello, and welcome back to the Bridging the Divide podcast. I'm your host, Rolando Bonilla. A lot of you have reached out and asked me to share with you a story of a time in my career where I felt maybe overwhelmed or scared, or seems that I may have struck a chord when I talked about that feeling, that stress, that normal fear that comes with taking things head on, particularly when you're beginning your career or you're building that business in the very beginning. Great example that I always comes to mind for me is when I was appointed to serve on the San Francisco Juvenile Probation Commission, which was the governing body that oversaw San Francisco's juvenile probation system. At the time, I was 23 years old, one of the youngest, if not the youngest, in the city and county of San Francisco to serve on a commission that actually oversees an actual department. Think of it, hundreds of employees, multi-million-dollar budget. It was a crazy, crazy situation that that I found myself in. I'll never forget when I got sworn in. Then Mayor Willie Brown swore me in his office. And at the end of the swearing in ceremony, he says to me, "Young man," he says, "I don't know if I just made your career or ended it, but we're about to find out." And everyone laughed. I wasn't laughing because I remember thinking, yeah, what does that mean? Did I, just walk myself into a situation where I was about to end it all right as it started? And so I started my journey as a 23-year-old commissioner for the city and county of San Francisco, one of the most important cities in the country. And I found myself with a really steep learning curve. And on top of that, I found myself with a very steep political learning curve. At the time, there were rumors of why I was appointed. And in fact, I remember reading in a blog that the city had sent a limo to come pick me up, and that in the middle of the night I got sworn in because of some political machinations that were happening around me. The reality of it was, no, I took the bus there. I didn't have a car at the time. I took the 5 Fulton from where I was at the University of San Francisco down to City Hall, which you could see from the University of San Francisco. Walked in, fresh off the bus, walked in, took my oath, shook some hands, and then got back on the bus and went back to the University of San Francisco. I've always told folks that remember that story that the fake story was a whole lot sexier than the actual story. I would have preferred it that way, but that wasn't the case. And then I show up to my first meeting, and I see. Now, if you've ever been to San Francisco City Hall, it's this beautiful, ornate building. It almost looks like the congressional building in Washington, D.C., with the massive dome. Uh, Old school, built in the early 1900s, marble. I mean, it's beautiful. It's also imposing. And I have my first meeting up in room 416, the committee room there, where non-board of supervisors commissions essentially would have their meetings and govern. And I show up, I walk into this meeting, and I see the whole room is packed. Say about a couple hundred people. Some of them who at that time I thought were allies of mine because we had positive relationships all throughout. And in government, if you don't know, there's this portion called public comment where the public is given usually about 3 minutes to come in and comment on items that are either in the beginning not on the agenda or specifically on items that are on the agenda. Well, here I am, 23 years old, about to take my first meeting officially governing. Before that, I served on the city's youth commission, which is great training ground, but it's not the same as running a department. And there I am, excited, a little overwhelmed, right? It's a new word ever here, overwhelmed. A little overwhelmed. And then public comment starts. And I'm smiling. I'm thinking everyone in the room is going to say nothing but good things about me because I knew a lot of these folks. And then it starts. And comment after comment after comment was just negative. I remember one woman saying that I was perhaps not only the most underprepared commissioner, but also ignorant. I had another one tell me that I didn't understand the life of kids in neighborhoods. They, of course, didn't know how I grew up, and that for that reason alone, I was incompetent and should be disqualified from serving. And this was my first day. This was my first day, right? And there I was excited, and I'm just getting this negativity being thrown at me, person after person after person. I remember my colleagues all looking at me. They weren't friends. I didn't know them. We didn't have a relationship. This is my first meeting. And they're looking at me to see what I was going to do. And at the time, internally, I myself was thinking what the hell I was going to do because this was different. Now, fortunately for me, I had started my career working as an aide for the Department of Public Health, which is right next to City Hall. So I had seen how folks move. I had seen how people operated. It was a great time to be at San Francisco City Hall. I interacted with then city supervisor Gavin Newsom, now the governor of California, interacted with the then young deputy city attorney named Kamala Harris, was at one point the vice president of the United States. I mean, it was a really exciting time. And those are just the names right? But there were some brilliant people around, and I found myself just taking it all in. So I had a sense that this was just a normal thing in San Francisco politics. But remember, I'm 23 years old. Back to the Bridging the Divide podcast. I'm 23 years old. I'm, not connected. I'm kind of figuring that out as I go along, and then my opportunity happens, and it is honestly a great memory for me now. But at the time, it was just insult after insult after insult after insult. And I remember how I said to myself, I said, look, man, this is not fun, but this is the baptism by fire that candidly, I think at the end of the day makes everyone better. And I really saw it that way. I saw it as this is my chance to either become better or my chance to essentially buckle under the pressure. And so I chose to take it as more of a challenge. And I chose to accept the fact that this was going to be my test to show people, but more importantly, show myself that I was, although not experienced enough for the moment, emotionally prepared enough for the moment. And that ended up being the right call for me because at the end of the day, what I experienced as a commissioner on day one was tiny in comparison to some of the issues that I dealt with later on. I dealt with everything from September 11th, where all department heads were asked to come to City Hall and commissioners were, kept updated on what it is that needed to happen and not happen, and the aftermath, the economic aftermath of managing a non-revenue generating department when the economy was impacted because of that national tragedy. I was a part of the replacing of a department head, which in itself was a controversial thing to do. And let alone when in a city as political as San Francisco, everyone's got, an opinion as to what you should or shouldn't do. I had budget reductions. I had the just the normal day-to-day tensions that come with managing people in a very political environment. And so because of that first day and how I accepted that it was an opportunity for me to get better, I was then able to learn from all of these first time experiences, because they were all first time for me. I was able to learn from all of these first time experiences and put myself on a path where I was able to extract the most growth and knowledge from whether it was a good opportunity or a bad opportunity. Now, let me be clear that, first meeting did not feel good. It required me giving myself a personal check and a reminder of who I thought I was at that time in order to survive. I remember telling the public at the end when I was able to speak that, I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there to do the best job that I can do. And I remember also telling folks that I wasn't looking for their love or their validation. As long as my parents and my siblings loved me and my friends loved me, that was enough for me. I remember that saying that felt pretty freeing too. Now, I didn't plan saying that. It wasn't something that I had scripted out because as you recall, I expected that meeting to be a great celebration of my genius and my amazing talents, and it was far from that. But see, that's life, right? When you're trying to build a company, when you're trying to get that job, a lot of times circumstances aren't what you expect them to be, but you have to be mentally nimble enough and really emotionally tough enough to not buckle to that moment and actually grow from it. I went on from there to, run for the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, lost, but I did it. I was 26 when I did that. Uh, I wasn't ready for that run. And yet doing that run was one of the best things that I could have done for myself because it made me grow up fast. I had to basically build a business out of nothing, secure financing, which is what campaign contributions are, navigate the landmines because I was just getting hit from all directions. And then on top of that, when I ran, I had some pretty big luminaries who decided to run for the same seat I wanted, which already made it. I'm talking about people who had been on ballots for years, people who were first to do things. And then there I was, this 26-year-old kid who, was a youth commissioner. And then after that was a member of the juvenile probation commissioner, which was a big deal, but I wasn't there long enough to really be so seasoned that I should have made that run, but I did it anyway. And so sometimes in life, you're going to make those runs, right? That you think you're ready, you're not ready, and you can win, you can lose. But at the end of the day, my attitude, and a lot of it stemmed from that, was that you don't lose if you're learning from it, and you don't lose if you're pushing yourself forward. Now, every one of these examples that I gave you were all firsts for me. So to tell you that I was calm and confident is a lie because I didn't know what I was doing. I was asking everyone I knew for advice. I had researched everything I thought I could research on the topic, but it still required me to do it and actually take those steps and experience those hard lessons on my own. But at the end, those hard lessons that I experienced made me better prepared for all of the other challenges that were coming my way. Now, I didn't necessarily take all of them with the best grace. Some I dealt with very, mature beyond my years. Some I was very immature in how I dealt with them. Some I was very calm, not because I was calm, but rather because I really did comprehend the magnitude of what it was that I was deciding. So, for example, when I was balancing a budget, I remember we walked into the council chambers, and the room was packed, and people were angry. And I remember they had assigned a deputy sheriff to us, to a couple of sheriff's officers to us to provide protection because people were angry and, upset at our decision making. Again, that was a first. And yet you have to learn to navigate and you have to learn to be very present in the moment. I remember that particular meeting I had multiple lessons in 30 minutes, the first 30 minutes of the meeting, from people yelling at me to, I was the chairman of the finance committee, to people threatening me. You name it, I experienced it in 30 minutes. Meetings would go on for hours, but they all built, right? They were each a brick. And each time I experienced something for the first time, it was something I didn't have to, that emotion I didn't have to worry about anymore because I've experienced it already. And so if you see these things as opportunities, they're always going to give you that space to grow. And so, what am I really saying here in telling you these stories of my time as a young commissioner in San Francisco? Is that you have to be okay with getting beat up a little bit too. That doesn't mean that you're gonna sit there and just take it like a piñata, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's like very much like boxing. You give hits, they give hits. The goal is for you to give more hits than the ones you get, but the goal is also for you not to buckle when you get hit. Because if you're able to develop that tolerance, then you're able to put yourself on a path where success almost becomes inevitable if you learn how to manage those pressures, those fears, and you're consistent. I consistently showed up. I went to every meeting. I consistently asked for help. I consistently asked for mentorship. I consistently on my own research, whether it was online, whether it was books, whether it was the paper. It's important for me to read the paper every day back then because I wanted to understand the political currents that I was in. Although I felt that I was navigating, would probably be being navigated for me. And I had to make sure that I knew where it was that I was being placed and why. And so that to me is the biggest kind of takeaway from these experiences, that you do have a choice. As scared as you may be, as overwhelmed as you may be, it's still on you to determine if these emotions are going to control you or if you're going to control them. And for me, from those experiences where I would say politically roughed up, I was able to develop this thick skin where honestly people say things about me, it doesn't bother me, or where people are coming after me and attacking me, but doesn't bother me because I'm driven more by the idea that I'm here to get better. You're always going to have an audience of folks that aren't happy with you. You're always going to have an audience of folks that feel you need to do it their way 100% of the time. And the time that you disagree with them, they're not happy with you and they let you know that. And you're always going to have time. You're always going to be in situations where people just are actively rooting against you. And so you have a choice to make. Do you allow yourself to get caught up in the emotionality that comes when those things happen? Or do you just accept this for what it is, part of this life, this school of hard knocks that we all have to go through as we're pursuing success, particularly, as I said, with the Bridge of the Divide podcast, right? As we're all trying to bridge that personal divide to get to that next level, it's just par for the course, right? You can't expect not to get hit if you've chosen boxing as a profession. Well, very much when you're trying to start a business or trying to start your career, you've chosen boxing as a profession. No one's going to hand it to you. Some people will like you and root for you. Some people will like you and not root for you. Some people will dislike you. Some people don't like anything about you and yet somehow will look at your talent and want to give you an opportunity. You can't control what you're going to walk into. What you can control is how you manage your emotions and how you manage yourself, because ultimately that is what's going to give you the best opportunity to succeed, and in the long run, the best opportunity to bridge your divide. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. Until next week, go get it. I believe in you.